together.
It's a poor choice of language that I had in there, but it was pretty much, that's how it was in the past. And
Yeah, I think it is an option, and then if I recall, I mean, it can already auto-renew, but the audit committee can essentially make the recommendation to council if we want to execute the option to renew or end the contract.
Well, I guess one of my questions, I assume that the option would be our option.
It is our,
that's not the way it's stated.
we can make sure that that's clarified, but it is our option, not theirs.
So just out of curiosity, what did we pay in 2022?
we paid $27,900, so they went up $2,000. But price, actually, when the audit committee, when the members look at that, price wasn't a significant factor in that decision. It was more of the knowledge of the firm, size of the firm, the knowledge of the staff that will be assigned to the audit. But they did go up $2,000, and they're still cheaper than the other.
So given that our process is the audit committee looks at these proposals that come in, and then they send it to us, and Ways and Means says, okay, fine, we agree with this is the firm that we are going to propose to town council that they contract with, and then it goes to town council. Is that the point at which we would negotiate price and some of these other terms? Because if so, then that's when the mayor would actually negotiate the value of the contract, not based on, I mean, I guess what I'm looking for is, what is it that we're looking to approve in the Ways and Means? The selection of this company as
the selection,
not the rate?
Well, the rate is not to exceed. It depends, you know,
But again, going back to Maura's point, if we're just selecting the firm that we're going to put forward for the mayor to negotiate the contract with, that's okay. If we're not, then, and we're actually putting forth everything that's on this piece of paper, then it includes their price. And so then when does the intervention occur that the mayor negotiates the contract price?
I think it's just the language in your ordinance that it says negotiation, but here it's not to exceed. So it depends on the number of hours. If, for example, at the audit committee meeting, there were some comments that they would like, the members would like to see some, actually the chair would like to see some additional testing or some additional concentrate on different areas. So that may require additional hours. This is the hourly rates are part of that contract. And, you know, like every other accounting firm, they just provide number of hours spent. So based on the basic audit, this is not to exceed that. And
I get that, but suppose the mayor would like to negotiate a not to exceed price of $28,000 because that's $1,000 more than what they charged last year, as opposed to $2,900.
We can make it. We can do that. At times that the price have been negotiated, we haven't done it with these type of professional contracts. We just essentially sent it out for the RFP. They've come back with their price, and we go with the price. But clearly, the mayor can negotiate price. At times where we have negotiated prices with projects was when, for instance, as we did Beach Walker Drive, we add the right turn lane. The mayor actually assigned, I believe was the mayor pro tem at the time, they came in at a price we, council, essentially approved, but then they said that they wanted the mayor to negotiate. So at that time, we did negotiate prices, but not with every contract that is presented to Ways and Means. If they feel like the price is reasonable, then they just proceed and recommend it to council. If they want the mayor or staff, typically the mayor or mayor pro tem or whomever on council, to try to negotiate, see if they get the price down, then that's discussed here. And the recommendation could be to see if the mayor can negotiate a reduced cost.
Well, or just you know, convince himself that the $29,900 is acceptable. But I guess if in fact there's an ordinance that says the mayor has to negotiate these contracts, then we need to do what we need to do to make sure he does have we have a step in there.
And it may be that, he may say, I look at the contract and I'm fine, and he doesn't decide to do any negotiating.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And based on the past years, have they always gone to the not to exceed amount, or has it been less than that?
it's been a little less.
So, I get we have a motion to approve this, and we've got a second. is there any desire on anybody's part to modify that in any way or amend this?
Not from my side. I was in the meeting. I have to say that the audit committee members did a very thorough review of both proposals. We had a very engaged discussion and came to a very uniform decision how to proceed by recommending to the Ways and Means which firm we should pick. So I feel very comfortable. As Dorota said, there was a discussion that I feel that in certain areas we might want to do an additional checkpoint on a rotational basis. So for example, they do of course audit in detail the transactions when it comes to procuring by the town, but the procuring process itself, the approvals, et cetera, behind the process itself is not audited. So that could be one of those areas. Salaries and benefits, business licensing process. So there are a few things that I would recommend that we are kind of rotating through year over year, some of these additional more procedural audits to make sure that, you know, we are also the way we are handling these things are proper. But otherwise, every question was answered. I met with them also personally. I have no reason to believe that this is not the right choice.
I guess the only question I would raise is a matter, I think, purely of form, given which I'm trying to find. Which site was it, Maura? I sent it to you. Is whether or not, kind of the point you're raising, Mr. Chairman, is whether we approve the retention of Malden, and then authorize the mayor to enter into contract negotiations.
And to be honest with you, Brad, I think that's, if in fact we have a statute that says he must, it doesn't say he must do it for 2 hours, it says he must do it.
Yeah.
So I would.
And then he would come back at the next council meeting where we would consider this.
And he will have talked to them and said, I have negotiated this, and this price is what we've settled on. I'd be okay with that.
That's just as, but I also personally agree with the mayor that we've got, as part of our strategic planning retreat, we decided we had to take a fresh look at a number of ordinances. This would be one where I think it would not, should be the mayor or his designee.
Yeah, I would agree. So do we want to take a vote on this motion, or do we want to make a slight amendment to the motion to add a provision for the mayor to, upon recommendation, the mayor should negotiate the final price before council approves it? Can I move for that amendment?
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
Now, do we vote on the amendment? We need Joe.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the second item of new business is review and recommendation to town council to approve an expenditure of $75,000 to the Conservancy toward the purchase of 2 properties off of Betsy Harrison Parkway. And I spoke with Lee before we started today, and he said he would like to take about 10 minutes to do a little brief presentation on what they're trying to do.
That'd be great.
And we'll let him do that, and then we'll maybe entertain a motion after he finishes.
Yep, that'd be fine. And just so that, I think you guys know, Lee and Colin, so the committee members have already received kind of a write-up in regards to the request. I included a map of the requested areas, and then I included a copy of your Greenbelt Fund application. So they do have a little bit of information.
Right.
Great. And we did include some additional information so that members of the audience and whoever's watching virtually can follow along as well. So yeah, I'm, for everybody watching in, I'm Lee Bundrick, the Senior Conservation Coordinator for the Kiowa Conservancy. I'm joined here with Kali Farah, our Land Preservation Specialist. Thanks for allowing us to join you to talk about this. This is an exciting opportunity that we fell upon fairly recently, and we're just trying to see how we can find ways to preserve this area. And we reached out to the town to discuss conservation funding. So just a quick overview of the Conservancy. So we are a nonprofit land trust operating on Kiowa Island, focused on the active preservation of and stewardship of Barrier Island habitat. So we're trying to consistently look for areas that we can preserve for wildlife. Currently, we preserve 2,308 acres through conservation easements and owned properties. And further, we're an accredited land trust. So we initially got accredited in 2017, and now we have been renewed in February after about a year-long process. So we're pretty excited about that.
And Lee, if you could just get back a second, the 68 entities and the 2,300 acres are all within the formal boundaries of Kiowa Island.
All except for a few. So this is a map of our preserved properties, and as you can see, a large majority of it is on Kiowa Island. So I would say about 2,200 acres of that is on Kiowa Island.
Okay.
And we're slowly starting to move into some other areas. We've moved into Seabrook and Johns Island a little bit, and we're kind of looking to expand that area. And mainly, we're looking at this in general area, which is in the Kiowa River watershed. So our focus has shifted from the boundaries of Kiowa Island and maybe some of the edges of it to an area that is focused on the watershed. So anything that falls within the southern portion of Johns Island, Seabrook, and Kiowa ends up in the Kiowa River. And we wanted to look at ways that we can look at protecting these areas to preserve water quality for wildlife, and as well as trying to make sure that we can maintain some of those habitat corridors for wildlife. And some, kind of giving a glimpse into our strategies. We're mainly on Kiowa Island and around the Kiowa River, but we're looking to sort of use this area next to the town as kind of an expansion point into Johns Island and some other areas, starting with some preservation of areas along the Betsy-Harrison corridor. So moving in beyond that. So right now we're slowly just trying to make sure we can conserve land here so we can preserve those habitat corridors and kind of move forward later on so we can protect other areas to maintain those corridors through Johns Island.
This is all a part of the Conservancy strategic plan.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
And from an ecological perspective, it makes sense to you in terms of why these properties would fit into that.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And mainly so we can protect the environment around there for the ecosystem. And so the property that we're looking at today is actually right across the road and down the street from the town of Kiowa Island Municipal Center. It's right next to Kinfolk and some of the residential properties that go up to the camp that's owned by the church right there. And we're looking at several other properties in the immediate vicinity, so this will add into the additional preservation of areas under current pending discussions. And to talk more about the property, I have Kali Farah here. He's going to talk more about the property in depth.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us again. So yeah, we do focus on Kiowa Island, and just, with our new strategic plan, we've started to branch outside of Kiowa Island and into Johns Island and other areas just right outside of our gate. Ultimately, everything that happens around us affects Kiowa as well. We are a wildlife conservancy, so everything that we do, we think about wildlife first. Humans have boundaries, but wildlife know no boundaries. Our wildlife travels from Kiowa to Johns Island, Seabrook, and all around us. So this property in particular has been on our radar for some time now. It is owned by Mason Hayward. It's 2 undeveloped lots, just below 6 acres. And the reason it was on our watch list, something that we were going to pursue, is because this is a great starting point for us right on Johns Island. It's right outside the gate. It's right along Betsy-Harrison Parkway, and it is adjacent to a pending residential easement. And there's also a current conservation easement several parcels below. So we're thinking in terms of contiguous preservation here for a wildlife corridor. It has multiple habitat types with an upland forest, some salt marsh as well. And this kind of gives you an outline too of the different habitat types you'll see in there.
parcel just above along Betsy Harrison, immediately above, that's Hemingway?
Correct. You have Hemingway and Kinfolk and the bakery. And these are some snapshots of the property inside, just kind of giving you an idea of the natural habitat that's undisturbed in there now. And like I said earlier, just wildlife have no boundaries. The reason we see this as high priority for us is that it provides habitat for travel, resting, and feeding for our wildlife that are on Kiowa that travel within Johns Island and our barrier islands. It also, as a bonus, protects natural infrastructure that plays critical to Kiowa Island as well from natural disasters such as hurricanes, helps with flood mitigation, stormwater runoff, and pollution control. There's also a reason to preserve the view shed and the rural nature of Johns Island and Betsy Harrison in particular. As you come onto Kiowa, it's not like you're just leaving a city right outside your gate and coming onto Kiowa. It's just a natural feel as you come onto Kiowa coming down that Betsy Harrison. It also has a lot of historical and cultural significance. The Battle of Haulover Cut took place where the old schoolhouse is now, but the troops did migrate all along the left side of Betsy Harrison Parkway, including this property in particular. And then like a side bonus of this is we are going to incorporate a public nature trail on the property that will come off of the existing sidewalk. It will go through the property and educate its visitors of the Battle of Haulover Cut. It'll educate them on the different native vegetation in the area, and will ultimately lead to a viewing bench or outdoor classroom type setting. And so it kind of falls into the Greenbelt application where we're making some minor improvements to the property. This is a conceptual design of the nature trail itself. As you see, we're going to incorporate some boardwalks, signage along the trail, including some landscape buffers to help hide, I guess, the adjoining properties from this one, opening the canopy a little bit to allow for more sunlight to come in and help the vegetation grow in there. And then you see it's got the use for restoration enhancement with some pocket gardens and pollinator gardens in there as well. And so this is our first Greenbelt application. It scores very high in their criteria. We've had nothing but good feedback from them. The total acquisition cost is $550,000 is what we in contract to buy it for. We are going to go through with this contract. We requested $345,000 in just the acquisition cost. The total application, you'll see the numbers are a little different because it in your packet will include the improvement cost, the closing cost, appraisals, environmental survey. But when it comes to just acquiring the property, it's $550,000. We've requested $345,000 of that from Greenbelt. We are going to contribute $205,000, and improvements add up to $39,500. And then this is that again. We are asking the town to consider $75,000 of our $205,000 for just the acquisition cost. This is broken down, simplified from the overall cost that includes the surveys and the appraisals. We are just looking for some assistance in the actual acquiring of the property. That's everything. I'd be happy to answer any questions and go over anything in more detail.
So this nature trail was new to me. That was not in, or maybe I overlooked it, but this nature trail is new to me, which I think is a good idea, but how do you manage parking?
Yeah, so this will not, as of now, there will be no parking on the property for it. Like I mentioned, this is a sort of bonus to the property. It's not the main reason we are protecting it, but it will be incorporated for those that do use that bike path going along Betsy Harrison Parkway, that they can find themselves along this nature trail. We are in discussion, or going to open up the discussion with those property owners and renters of the Kinfolk and Hemingway to see if maybe they would be open to having parking where they don't always use it, or on the side where there's a little bit more open space, that it could be mutually beneficial for people coming to shop where they are and also be able to walk on the nature trail itself.
Was there also conversation possibly with regards to the first portion of the front part of the property, not to necessarily have parking, but maybe have something for a space for ADA, and then maybe for if a bus pulls up to be able to drop the kids off and get back on? So there's not officially parking in front, but there was something that...
We have discussed the possibility of it, and it's something that we will discuss with Greenbelt as well. You know, it's not necessarily required, we don't have to do it, but it's something that we could consider putting in there as well. But it's also important to protect that vegetation on the front of the property because it creates a sound buffer from the property itself when you're inside. So it's an idea we've considered.
Are there any buildings on either of these parcels today, even beat-up buildings?
No, sir. What there is on the property is past dumping on the site that's in our improvements in the applications to get that removed, along with an old fence that's been there before. But no, there's no old residential
No structures or anything there?
No, sir. It was in contract to be developed. It could be developed for a residential site, and so that's why we sought to purchase it as well, to limit development in that area.
I again want to pick up on this visitors thing because, I mean, it's a great place for bringing school classes, et cetera. So I'm really concerned about, you know, where the school bus would stop, park, let the kids off on. I looked at the property just on Saturday and I was stunned by the speed of large trucks. I mean, just racing by that spot. I mean, it's unbelievable. So how do you plan to manage this?
Manage the parking or
Well,
dropping
manage,
off?
I mean, the safety of the school classes you want to invite to the property.
If we had some, a school reach out to us and want to visit the property for some sort of outdoor education, then we would probably work with those adjoining properties at Kinfolk and Hemingway City if that parking area could be used during a period of time. Like I said, it's not the main priority to have it there, but it is there, so it can be incorporated, but we haven't dove too far in how, you know, it kind of limits also how much will be through that area, so.
Can you in this slide point out the camp that if you turn by the church and you go all the way to the back, where is that?
Okay, so above the star, if you just follow that road just north of it all the way to the left, if you got who's got a pointer? You do?
I was going to do a pointer,
Yeah.
but it's like disappears on screen.
Down, right here, yeah.
Oh, yeah, so
That,
it's, yeah, to the left.
that, to Michael's point, I don't know, that could be a place to start. I mean, that could be that's all dirt road, I think. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
in terms of parking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
And the good thing is that we have up to 5 years within our Greenbelt plan for this property to finish the nature trail and do everything that we want to have done. We have 5 years for that, up to. So that gives us ample time to be able to reach out to these
Yeah.
adjoining property owners to see if there's an opportunity to work with them before we have to go in and put a impervious surface parking area in our lot itself.
the Conservancy is truly one of the jewels of this community. I think everybody holds you in high esteem. Are you ever called in on a developmental project? Does John Taylor or the ARB, does anybody ever call on the Conservancy to come in and take a look at something that's happening in?
On top of that?
Yeah, I can talk about it. Frequently, whenever there are large development plans, we hear about it through the community, either through the town or through word of mouth. And most of the time, we want to have a discussion with them to figure out ways that we can limit the impacts from that development. So we
Right.
talk about, vegetative buffers, about, friendly practices to reduce runoff, this, that, and the other. We usually don't have conversations unless we have previous conversations with the town about it.
I would note that the Conservancy put together under Lee's authorship a very thoughtful memo regarding development of the Upper Beachwalker parcels that we had presented to the Planning Commission prior to their consideration of the preliminary subdivision plat to talk about ways to better protect bobcats in that habitat. Just a few questions. You're requesting monies from the town of Kiowa Island, but the issue, I guess, is if we didn't approve this for whatever reason, what then?
We are going through with the contract.
Okay.
That is set.
So you have sufficient resources regardless of whether the town participates?
Yeah, we are, based on the scoring of the Greenbelt program, it sounds like it's in favor and that we would be awarded those funds at the least to be able to go through. And if that still fell through, we would still be going to pursue the property.
So the town's participation in this instance, and by the way, some of these questions we've talked about at our previous meeting, which was very helpful and constructive, is simply to basically extend the Conservancy's resources further to be able to do these types of projects.
That, and so a part of the Greenbelt grading criteria is how much support you have from municipalities as well. So this would help us score higher with Greenbelt. And now we put into the application that there is the possibility of the town helping, and then they would see that as that would increase our score if we were able to get funding from the town.
So it's a little bit of a chicken egg issue. Which comes first? Because and we hadn't gotten to this, but I assume anything that we authorize would be contingent upon this project going forward. That's not. We're not just giving you $75,000 and the Greenbelt turns it down. So, so is it? Which is happening first? We approve, and then the Greenbelt, the county approves under the Greenbelt initiative.
Yeah, and I think that, I think in terms of trying to getting into the budget, I think getting it approved by the town first to show the Greenbelt committee that we have got support from it would be the best. But I think, yeah, it would be contingent on us on several other things, depending on what the town sees as appropriate.
But basically, we're not writing a $75,000 check until you get whatever the Greenbelt money is, check.
Yeah, exactly. And, making sure that we go through the due diligence process and everything before we get the property, because, we need to make sure we have clean title, that the title work investigation's up to date, everything. So we want to make sure the property is good to go before we even, discuss about how we're going to get reimbursed and this, that, and the other, so.
So I was trying to understand kind of what it is. We don't have a resolution in front of us, but I assume we will at the council meeting as to exactly what is happening. We're authorizing $75,000 to be provided, would be authorizing $75,000 provided to the Conservancy in the event that they actually close on the acquisition of this property and also get Greenbelt funds?
You could, make it contingent that we get Greenbelt funds, but even if we didn't get Greenbelt funds, we are still looking to pursue the property so the town could still opt to fund the project.
You don't really want to, of course, it'd be great if you get Greenbelt funds, but you want to essentially say, even if, like you said, if you guys don't get the funding, the Greenbelt funds, you still have funds to be able to purchase a property.
Correct.
You would still like the town to participate in the $75,000. It would just all be contingent, of course, that you guys close and then you submit us to be reimbursed back, like you currently do with a lot of your projects that we currently partner with. You all, once you either complete the project, you then submit your invoice to us and we reimburse you back.
Yes, ma'am.
And, to further on that, we do have to do a lot of due diligence on properties beforehand. So if the town wants us to provide anything about the title investigations beforehand, the appraisal, to make sure that everything's in line with what they believe is an appropriate purchase, we're willing to do that as well.
More broadly, I certainly applaud the Conservancy's reach beyond our island borders. You obviously can do that of your own initiative. If the board approves that, you don't need to have the town involved, but this is an instance where there's an opportunity potentially to score higher and get monies from both the county and the town. And to the point that Maura made, I do think that, just personally speaking, that it is in the interest of the residents of our town, and I think my sense is there would be significant support more generally for protecting the gateway into Kiowa Island along Betsy Carson Parkway, and this is not the first step in that. There's been other instances, but a critically important one. Now the issue is kind of going forward. There was some prior conversation. You've kind of it's not part of the proposal right now for kind of additional monies, but do you have your eye on other potential parcels, and how does that process work? Do you approach typically a landowner? Do they approach you? And, do you pay full, market, assessed value? Do you negotiate the price down? How does the process typically work?
Yeah, I'll try to answer all of those. When we started our strategic plan, we came up with a kind of a land conservation strategy, and a lot of it had to focus on the current zoning of parcels in the area and the potential development pressures that are occurring, as well as acreage and, distance from roads, view shed, this, that, and the other. So we have kind of a priority list for properties, and then we also rank it based on community input. So we have an idea of what properties we would like to see for a variety of different metrics. In particular, we were trying to focus on this specific area. And I think it was you that mentioned that we needed to think about, if we wanted to preserve the areas, like for us, the priority is just preserving it. But if we also want to look at other things like, being able to walk from here to there and be safe, I think that's another thing that we're willing to look into, because it's a means to an end to preserving property for us. Your last end of the questions, can you remind me of the things you were saying?
Do you go to the property owner, or do the property owners come to you?
yeah.
How do you negotiate that?
Yeah, so it's different with every property. It's property specific. A lot of our outreach comes from either just sending letters, knocking on doors, meeting the community, getting passed on to other people is where we've had a lot of success in the past 2 years. A lot of the property owners that we work with are looking, whether it's for conservation easements in which there is no negotiation really of sale price, but we've also talked to specific landowners about bargain sales, in which that's something we entertain as well. So sometimes there is some negotiation in those acquisitions. So.
And you're a member or participant, I guess, in the Johns Island Task Force?
That's correct.
And so there's a meeting upcoming on Wednesday, I guess. We'll all be there. I'm one of the 2 council representatives to that. So do these kinds of conversations, has your strategic plan been presented to all of those participant stakeholders in the JTIF? And then somewhat related to that, I think the Low Country Land Trust and or the Coastal Conservation League are part of that as well. How do you guys kind of divide up the world, if at all? Because, you've all got some resources. You all have finite resources. Low Country Land Trust does own some of the marshland around here. How do you work together?
Good question. So yeah, the task force is aware of our strategic plan. And it's been great being a part of that team, because everybody in the conservation group can get together at those meetings and kind of show everybody where everybody's working. And then that kind of falls into your next question with Low Country Land Trust. Their focus, they know where we're on Betsy Carrison and the southern end of River Road. They look all over Johns Island, but more specifically the northern end of River Road, along Maybank, along near the airport, those areas. So we're almost like squeezing Johns Island, if you will, approaching it from both angles. So we're not running over the same territory. We are in constant communication with Low Country, so we're well aware of each other's projects and ways to work together.
Are there ever any instances, or would there be instances, or are there barriers to working together on acquisition of some larger, more expensive parcels?
Yeah, I can get on that. So, pretty frequently with larger parcels, especially if there's a small land trust or a land trust who wants another person involved, they usually are assigned a backup holder. A good example is Little Bear Island, where the backup holder for us is the Wetland Americas Trust, which is with Ducks Unlimited. So it's pretty frequent we can do a collaboration, but that would be for like easements on larger properties, which take a lot more time, but for donations and fee simple acquisitions, a little bit more clear, kind of straightforward.
Okay, so I have also a few questions. I really apologize, but I want to come back to the topic at hand here. So please correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding is that the reason why we can apply and potentially receive funds, or not we, I mean you guys, from the Greenbelt program is because that these 2 properties are outside of our private island.
Yes. So
my understanding is that we would never get a Greenbelt fund for a property on Kiowa Island.
Well, so the Greenbelt program does have specific money set aside for the town of Kiowa Island as well. And then, but everything within Charleston County, a nonprofit or land trust like ours can apply for those Greenbelt funds. I believe the town of Kiowa Island has applied and been awarded Greenbelt funds in itself.
Yeah, so to answer your question, so we can apply for Greenbelt funds on the island, but not behind the gate, because on the island, Beach Walker
Well,
drives
I'm
concern.
sorry, I was
Yes.
imprecise. Yes,
So
I
we
wanted
do
to
have,
say, yes.
so the town, we did apply, we have
course.
received 2 Greenbelt funds. One is actually on Beach Walker, which is the, I keep forgetting to call it, it's the crab area where people go fishing, and the other one is actually the kayak launching right on the bridge. Those are our 2 Greenbelt funds.
But also the conservancy can, or for a conservancy project behind the first gate, can you get Greenbelt funds or not?
No.
That was my understanding. So one of the benefits also here is we get these additional funds to protect our surroundings, which we would otherwise not receive.
Correct.
Okay. Second question, because your numbers don't seem to match entirely with the document we have. Which is fine. Although you can maybe go back to this one page you had with the numbers.
Yeah. And
Somewhere. So what will our $75,000 be assigned to?
that will be the purchase price of the property. So the actual sale price is what that $75,000 would be, a part of our $205,000. So you would just take 75 out of our 205, essentially. The reason that the numbers don't directly align with what you've seen in the packet is because the packet also includes the cost associated with the minor improvements, the closing costs, surveys, environmental assessments, and so forth.
But that comes on top of the 550, right?
Yeah, so to make it simplified, we are wanting to request $75,000 of just the purchase price.
Okay. So I don't know what my colleagues are thinking, but I like the idea with this educational path that you're proposing. So could we maybe divide up the 75 and say a certain portion of this goes to the purchase price and the other portion goes to fully funding that educational path at a later time?
So you could do that. But the application itself, when it's voted on and approved, is set in stone. We have to live up to the expectations that Greenbelt is expecting. So those improvements, the trail and everything that we've incorporated, are going to happen regardless with the funding.
No, I understand that. That's why I'm saying I'm not trying to cheat you out of the 75K here,
Yeah.
but I'm in favor of the idea that the town would dedicate money to the trail.
Okay.
At next year or in 2 years, whenever you feel ready. Also to be able to influence the safety of those that are visiting, as I mentioned earlier, and the rest goes to the purchase price. I mean, for you, it's left, right, and left and right pocket because you have to spend the 550 plus 40K, is my understanding.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That is correct.
Okay.
Lee, you mentioned dumping. You're talking about debris, not debris, leaves and branches and things like that. There isn't any, what kind of dumping was there? You have a contractor dumping stuff back there too.
Yeah, potentially, yes. And,
Really?
and currently, we have plans to remove that, so we already have a contractor in line. Once we get the property to remove that trash, but essentially, there's 2 lines of tires that are about 4 foot high. that
You're
are
not
on the
worried about
property.
anything being toxic, are you?
Yeah. So that we have a phase 1 environmental survey taking place, and so if they see that a phase 2 is needed, then we will do that as well, and then the appropriate actions will be taken to clean up any, pollution or anything that's happened on the property.
Yes.
So I think we have a motion to recommend to town that we approve $75,000 towards the purchase of these properties. And your point about allocating some to the purchase and some to the other, I think that's something we can do at the town council meeting too.
Well, they need to think about it if that,
Right.
and we need to think about
Yeah,
it. I
yeah.
think there's some benefits of doing it this way, but I don't think it would affect our current motion.
And I just want to add, on their project budget in regards to the unpaved trail, boardwalks, et cetera, the total cost is $17,500, but the Greenbelt funds would contribute $9,500 of that, so they're only require $8,000. So
Yeah, so we need to be
if we wanted
careful.
to do that, it would be 75,000 less the 8, so
Yep.
the rest, so they do have that, it's 8,000 is what they budgeted.
Yeah, so we just, but we can do that at the town council meeting, I think. So we have a motion to approve this. We have a second. Is there any more discussion?
As long as it's, I mean, understood that at least it would be my preference that the monies are essentially expended to the extent that they actually receive green belt.
So who made the motion?
I think I did.
So would you like to?
Stephanie's in.
I'm sorry, I have one question. So you want to have it, so only if they receive Greenbelt funds. So if they don't receive Greenbelt funds, but they're still want to move forward with purchasing it, you're not willing for the town to participate?
Well, again, it's just my personal view that, to augment additional public monies, this is part of our $75,000 helps scoring with the Greenbelt Initiative.
Yeah.
So, that's how they've represented it.
So I guess the question would be, if we're going to amend the motion, do you want it amended so that they get the 75,000 only if they get the Greenbelt funds, or if they subsequently close on the property?
They would have to be contingent on both.
Both.
Yeah.
So they would be contingent on getting the Greenbelt funds and closing on the property, not just closing on the property. Is that,
Yes.
just to be clear?
Yes.
Well, if they would not get the Greenbelt fund, they always can come back and make another proposal.
Fair enough. Do you want to amend your motion?
I would. Do you want me to
To amend it to,
include the condition that we provide the money if the Greenbelt fund is approved and the closing has taken place?
all right, is there a second
That-
to,
Yeah.
Second.
okay? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Crickets. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Okay, chairman's report. So my theme on this chairman's report is much the same as last time, and that is that as we spend money and as we look at revenue opportunities, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that these numbers can get really big, really fast, and I don't want us to ever lose focus on the fact that we're spending not really our own money, but our community's money. And so in just a little bit, Darota's going to go through this revenue projection, and the numbers are large. And a change of 2%, 3%, 5% here and there is still big numbers. So as we review this time the revenue and next time the expense side of this, I'll reiterate what I said last month. Let's just be careful that we are looking at this money as though it was our own. And if we personally would have spent the $75,000, great. And if it was under the conditions we just approved, great. But let's just be sure that we are sensitive to the fact that if we're not careful, we can make really big mistakes because the numbers get big really fast. All right? That's all I have. Darota.
And Dorota, before you begin, my apologies. I had mentioned as chairman to my fellow council members, I have to take another call at 4 o'clock, but there is a quorum present. So I will return as soon thereafter as I can.
Okay, thank you. So first, we're going to look at the quarterly budget report. So just for the new council, every quarter, I'll have a quick review of our fund balances and how we do compared to the budget. So as of December 31st, our fund balance, which just again for the new ones, it's like equivalent to retained earnings. The total was about 29 million. Of that amount, about 54% or 16 million is our general fund balance, which is undesignated, and the money that could be spent up to the town council discretion. about 6.6 million is the special funds, which are pretty much by law, by state law or ordinances required to be spent on tourism. And 6.8 million is our capital fund balance, which is designated by the ordinance, not ordinance, by resolution, to be spent on capital projects or emergency funds. This fund balance is about 1.1 higher than beginning of the year. That's what we've made this year. And just looking at, I don't know if you, what you see, I'm just gonna go back to, Petra, can I go back to the balance sheet? No, okay. Okay, then done, let's, okay. So, but you do have it maybe in your, okay. In your packets, there is the budget report. So our revenues are higher, about 1.2 million that what we budgeted. And this is a reminder that last year budget was very conservative. Last year we were, at this point, we didn't really know what is the base year. If 2019, a pre-pandemic year, is a, thank you. Yes, perfect, thank you. If that's the year, so anyway, so we were very conservative, and based on the 6 months of collection, we'll see that pretty much all the revenues are gonna be above the budget, and they're gonna exceed the budget, and they will continue through the year, unless something happens, but probably not. So
When you say continue at the same pace, so you would be looking at something close to a $2 million?
yes, so
Accretion.
when we look at the budget, so I'm projecting in a budget that our this year will, I'm sorry, real quick. So we'll end up with about 15 million, and we budgeted 12 million. So it could be even more. And but also the big component of this is interest income. The expenditures are pretty much in line with the budget. We 50% or 6 months, and the total expenditures are about 48% of the total budget. There is few negative. There are few expenditures that are going to show negative variance, and they will continue through the year. And this is the professional services. This is for all the assignments for our attorney that are outside of his contract, and all other attorneys that we have to use for help. Consultants, it's related to the Lou Hammond group that was hired after the budget was approved, but it was approved by the council. The capital outlay, the building line item is about 48,000 more, and this relates to a higher cost of the construction of that, or improvements for the Castro Court Recycling Center. And the vehicle one, we had that vehicle budgeted last year, but because of shortage, we just purchased it this year.
Dorita, I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty here walking through these pluses and minuses.
Oh.
So
Plus in the revenues is good, minus is
No,
bad.
I
And
know
the other way on the, yes.
Okay. Yes, I knew that. Fiscal year 2023, fiscal year 2022. $1,021,000 is our salaries for fiscal year 22. $1,292,000 is our fiscal year 23. You have that $270,000 positive.
So, well, yes, so, but there is, we have, this is true just for 6 months. So at that point, since then we had 4 more full-time employees. So that's, I was gonna do like a more detailed analysis of the salary cost at the next meeting, where we look at the budget for expenditures.
Okay, so you're looking at a positive number. If 23 is greater in your expenses, if 23 is greater than 22,
Then it's positive. We
then you're
spent
looking
more.
at it as being positive. and I'm dropping down to the bottom. So our net of revenues and expenses is
So this year,
$852,000, as you say, positive in the sense that it's greater. Am I getting to the chairman's admonition? You know, that's 20, so our expenses increased by 22% from 22 to 23.
for the 6 months, yes.
For the 6 months.
Yes.
Understood. And our revenues were off for the 6 months by 2%.
2%, that's correct.
Okie dokie.
But with the revenues, though, it was mostly, it's timing. When you look at this, when you look at those, comparing to last year, to the 6 months, the building permit, special projects, but this is kind of one-time revenue, so this is not a continuous business licenses, but it's just a timing of how we're going to receive that revenue. So I feel like it's going to be pretty comparable to last year in revenues.
Understood, but it's still
But if you look at the big,
substantially off of what the growth of our expenses.
It is,
Yes,
but
yeah.
this is just the 6 months. So yes, and
No,
some expenses, when you look, yes, but it is.
Yes,
For truth.
but if you start looking at some of the big numbers that are the positive variances in the expenses, there's zero in fiscal 2022, and they're 197,000, 154,000,
Right.
105,000 more. So there's some categories that are substantially more in fiscal '23 than they were in fiscal '22. And I guess, you know, the extension of what Mr. Mayor is saying is that maybe we ought to understand why those particular categories are so large. You know, and is that something that's going to repeat, or is it a timing issue, or what?
With some is timing, like salaries, I could just salaries, it's
I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not worried about the salaries component.
Okay.
I'm worried about one where we had year-to-date expenses for capital outlay building of 197,000, and we had none last year.
So
That
because
should
we
be a
didn't-
specific project.
We didn't have any projects, yes. Well, last year we did the garage renovation. So if there is no project, the capital outlay is more of a kind of one-time expense, depending on what it was. When you look 2 years ago, we had almost 2 million because we were finishing the Parkway. So capital outlay is not a good comparison.
So, but again, it contributes to the $800,000
It does.
difference.
It does.
And so then you got 105,000 as consultants. We've kind of explained what that one is. You know, there's another one, you know, there's 2 or 3 of them that are in the $75,000 range that, you know, at some point we ought to make sure we know, you know, what
So
those
maybe
are.
for the next quarter, I can have the items that are over, let's say, 10% compared to last year or something. I'll have like a little explanation.
That would, I think
What
that
I've
would be
been
helpful.
doing, yes, what I've been doing in the past was more a comparison to an explanation to the budget, but we didn't look closer to compare to last year, but I'll be happy to add some of that too.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful because
Okay.
we know the budget was a very conservative budget.
Sure.
And so,
Yeah.
you know, as a result, we've killed the revenue.
Yes.
And we're favorable on the expenses, but then when you.
Absolutely, but this is actually your suggestion and Dr. H suggestion to add the 2022 to last
Yeah.
year. So this is the first time I'm presenting it, and
Yep.
I'll be happy to extend that
I think that'd be good.
to some explanation too.
Yep. Okay.
But what we have to look at, John, is not so much the budget comparison, but really the actual comparison.
No
Right? And as
question.
you said, I mean,
I'm with you, yeah.
our costs have increased, and I know, Dorada, there are a couple of timing issues, both
Yes.
on the top line as well as in the expenses.
Yep.
But for the next session, we really need to go deep into some of these topics. I think we talked in the retreat already quite a bit about the personnel cost. I think we all understand that there are additional people, but also the need for us to increase salary, you know, to retain our people, and so on. But if we can break this down a little bit more, that would really be helpful.
Yes.
Right? And because we need to watch this, right? I mean, a substantial increase in expenses even if we all understand where it's coming from, is something that we have to watch very closely. No? Thank you.
Anything else on that report? No? Okay.
See, I think your expenditure explanation is just excellent, except it's compared to budget.
Right.
Exactly, but that's, and I'll be happy, like I said, this is the first time that and actually, this was just a last moment because I didn't even realize the whole page didn't print. But I did, I added it after the retreat. I added this two more columns.
I understand, but I'm just saying it's that
And I will
kind
add
of
those,
explicit-
everything over 10%, I guess, or maybe 20. I'll see how it looks next month and I'll explain those.
But then again, for our actual management, right, we need to look at actual versus actual.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Because we all know we are still in the phase where budgets are
Yeah.
difficult, right? Because we cannot predict, and we will probably have the same situation for 23, 24.
Yes.
Right, where we have to decide how conservative we are going to be, but then the real measure for us is really actual versus actual.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, okay. No, and I will do that for the next quarter. And
But thank you for adding all the variances. This was very
okay.
helpful.
Well, you're
Dorada.
welcome. I
Thank
hope
you.
it's helpful. Yeah, that was also a suggestion. So there's more columns and more percentages. So now with the budget. So we're starting with the revenues, and as a reminder, I just want to tell you that that the town of Kiowa doesn't have a property tax. We do not have a set income source. We heavily rely on tourism and on the economy. And just I thought that would be like a couple of fun facts to look at. That this is all based on the information that I've collected either through management companies or in our database CitizenServe that we collect for business licenses or hospitality taxes. Just so you know, but so based on that information, we had about 1.5 million tourists on the island, and they've spent 49% on lodging, food, shopping, golf. Those are the major categories. And also we have a good increase in both business license revenue and building permits. Those are our main revenue generating activities or fees that actually are general fund and can be spent for the town's functions. So now I was gonna, so
Dorada, and these numbers include Freshfields, correct?
that's correct.
So
Yes,
Andle
everything
Inn in terms of,
Yes,
of lodging
lodging,
and food
yes,
in terms
yes,
of all the restaurants in
yes,
Freshfields.
Yes. Everyone who apply for a business license or pays hospitality taxes within the town. And I just want to start just giving you a little history of our revenues that you'll see that except for year 2021 when the island closed for COVID, actually closed for tourists and restaurants, everything was closed, you'll see this growing trend. And you do see in 2022, it's like this huge spike almost in every revenue source. And that's why when last year, well, we struggled or we were thinking like, what year in the past, we used to just look at the averages and the budget was pretty much perfectly, aligned with what it was. There was a little growth, those trends were pretty much easy to calculate. The latest few years were kind of off, but now with the going like third year after COVID, for my projections for a 2024 budget, I'm actually going to use 2020, 2021, and 2023 projected as the averages to a new norm. So, in overall, I'm budgeting about the revenues of about 14.5 million, which are about 4% or 6,000 lower than the current year projections. But this is mostly because of few revenue sources. This year we received $440,000 in APR funding, which was help related to the COVID funds. And our revenue from special projects this year, we budgeted, or I projected 500,000, but we actually got the check last week, and it's going to be 600,000. So I need to change the projected for this year, but for next year we only projecting few projects, special projects. That so between those two numbers, that's pretty much the main difference between this year to next year. I'm just going to go quickly over every revenue source, just so there is a good understanding. But the building permits, we are projecting to decrease about 300,000, and this is mostly related to a expected slowdown in the construction activity on the island. As I mentioned, we're still projecting permit revenue for a few projects, the Beach Walker Commons and Beach Walker Lot 1 and Night Heron Phase 2. The business licenses revenue is budgeted to increase a little bit, but this is mostly based on higher cost of the goods and services, as the license fee is based on the gross revenues. And at the retreat, we were talking about how different classes, how we collecting money from different classes. So I just have like a little summary for a couple of years, how different classes contribute to our revenue, business license revenue. Those classes are, the classes are set, but how the businesses fall into the class changes every couple of years. That's the IRS pretty much evaluates businesses by how profitable they are, and the least are class 1, the most are class 8. So every 3 years, pretty much, for example, like the hotels change from 1 to 3.
So to sum it, I'm not sure about that. The revenues budgeted for 23-24 are down $600,000, almost to the penny, from projected 23. 400 of it is that one time. So yeah, a couple $100,000 less than 23. I could only wish we get that close. I told Deruta if she wanted, I know she doesn't want to be conservative. I could only wish that we're only a couple $100,000 off of 23. I don't know what to expect for 23, 24. But I know what you did. I'm not disagreeing with what you did. Well, I am disagreeing. I mean, I'm not disagreeing, but my crystal ball is a little bit murkier.
So you think
Clouded.
we should be lower?
I would make it lower, but I'm just a voice. I'm just a voice. But I do not view this as being, I mean, I understand the arithmetic, but I'm real worried about 23, 24. And like I said, sit here next year and say, well, we were too conservative, but 23, there are just too many things in this world that we have no idea. But anyway, a couple $100,000 for more the business that we saw in 22, 23, I would say that would be a wonderful year.
And it's interesting, if you look at it rationally on each of these categories, each of these revenue categories, the ones that are big numbers, the ARP funding, the reduction in the building permits, the reduction in the special projects number, all make perfect sense. And the other ones, the changes year over year are not terribly meaningful. So basically what it says is, we believe our business revenue opportunities are going to be flat year over year, with the exception of special items. I don't know that we have a better crystal ball than that.
Yeah.
I'm saying, I'm not arguing the point.
Yeah,
but
no,
I'm just
I get
saying, I really like to beat the heck out of the budget. And like I said, that would be great news if we got within a couple $100,000. I agree. I understand, John. I made my speech when we all got together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dorada, I have one question. So which is really only related to the permits, special and regular permits. So what did you use to say 20% less? Is there any indication in terms of, the drop in properties sold in 2022 that would, make us believe that, 20% happens? I mean, is there any linkage to any number that you relate to, or is it just best guess?
It was guess. However, we looked at a couple of things. So there is only limited number of contractors on the island that build houses. There is a lot of renovations, but for the new houses, how many houses they can handle. We did look at the averages again, how many permits were issued through a lot of years. We look at 5 years, 3 years, and it is rather guess, but it is educated, or we try to make it an educated guess. But also, with all this, we also know that the cost of construction went up, and the permit is also based on the cost of the full project. So with that, yes.
So let me ask you a question along those lines. If we said we wanted to add just a wee bit of science to it, if you looked last year at the number of undeveloped lots on the island and the number of new residential permits that were issued, and then looked this year and said, if we have that same percentage of permits issued for the reduction of available lots a year later,
We can apply that.
well, it would be interesting to look at that to see, because that says the slowdown is partially based on fewer lots being available and only a certain percentage of people actually build on every year.
Exactly. And that's what I was getting to, some kind of a reference point that we can use as a checkpoint.
Yep.
Right? Does that make sense? But also, Dorada, when I understand it correctly, so your 24 budget is 1.2 plus 300K for the permits. So 1.5, correct? 2024 budget, 1.2 million plus 300K. So
Yes,
1.5.
that's correct,
So
yes.
1.5,
Yes,
right?
yes,
When I go back to your first big page with all these little bars, that would, I assume, would refer to the same amount in 2021. Because in 2021, you said building permits is 1.559 million.
Yes.
So basically what you're saying is that in the year 23-24, we are back to 21-22.
But we had Cape, well, the special projects, the revenue of it kind of sometimes skews this number, because one big one for 500, it's skewing it. So I need to go back and refresh my memory or look what was exactly the breakdown between the regular permits and the special project. But it's often the special project, and I believe that was Cape.
Okay, so have a look at this. That's all fine. We can talk about this then
Yes.
again next month. But I think I would appreciate a reference point back to a prior year. So
Sure.
when you say, 22, 23 was exceptional, as we all know now.
Yes.
Right? So what are we referring back to? Is it then 2021, 21, 22? I think that would also help us on the revenue side to judge, because it's crystal ball, right? We know this, especially in these terms and times. So that helps us a little bit as a reference point.
Okay. I will, yes.
The other revenue streams that John said, I mean, they are, for me, relatively stable. There's no surprise.
Yep.
2% up, 2% down. I don't think that there's a major risk factor here, but the permits, as I think the second largest item, we want to be careful.
More, okay. And so I'm not gonna go ever. I just want to add one on franchise fees, because that was we talked about this at the retreat. So the franchise fees right now we collect from the Berkeley Electric, and there was a question about the water company. So I reached out to my peers in South Carolina, and actually none of them are collecting from water or sewer. I reached out to the municipal association. The lawyer is looking into it. So I will have some, so this is not just Kiowa, that they've collected impact fees when I was built, but they just not charging franchise fees on the water. But based on the definition, it is says utility company. So there must be something. But as soon as I know, I just want to let you know that as soon as I know some better information, but we didn't forget about that. So we're looking into it. And another thing I want to mention about is that about 80% of municipalities in South Carolina charge 5% for electric. We charge 3%. So if we ever want to go up, it's like a 1 year kind of turnover, because the fee is based on last year collection. But just want to let you know that this is something that we on the lower end. Of course, it affects customers because Berkeley is going to pass it to the customers, but just want to let you know.
Okay, then my last question is, okay, let's assume business licenses, hold on one second, not business licenses, building permits are going down as you propose, right? Next year by 500K, right? Don't you think that this would also potentially have an impact on building permits? Or, I'm sorry, on business licenses for builders?
So I feel like because there's more renovations now, and the business license is based on the gross, and the prices went out. So I feel like this is not going to really affect that. And, we have with new construction, that means there will be new landscaper, new little businesses that will be involved on the island. So I feel like this is not a correlation that, if that goes down, that will go down.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm a builder and I build 2 houses for $1 million or 1 house for $2 million, I pay the same business license fee because it's gross revenues of $2 million?
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
So
Yeah.
I know how difficult you all work, how much pressure's been on you. I'm only saying, it's still a heck of a lot easier to manage with volumes pushing you than when volumes aren't pushing you. So I think as we start talking about expenditures,
Sure.
just as a cheat sheet, you may want to have a what if.
Yep.
What if things start
Yeah,
going?
we talked about that, yeah.
What if
Yes.
things don't proceed, and what some of the checkpoints would be?
Yeah.
A quarter, 6 months, trimester, I don't know, but I'm just, I'll go along with this revenue, but I just think we need to be cognizant of that, about what if, because I don't, when we start pulling the trigger on things, garbage, arts, there's just a lot of things that we provide to the community that are, God knows, they're hidden, or they're not understood, or they're just taken for granted. There'd just be things we'd have to be ready to address, but.
Yep, that's for sure.
And I hope we never have to.
So these year 2 cost sheets, you have them every month, right? Or only
Every
once a quarter?
Once
Only
a quarter, yes. Mhm.
Okay. Is that a lot of additional work to also produce year to date each month?
No.
Okay. I think that would also be something I would like to consider just for next year, especially in the first couple of months, to see how things are going, to at least circulate among us.
I made that request of Deruta probably around 10 years ago.
Okay, good.
It's difficult, or not to you, excuse me.
No, but to do monthly, and I said no?
No, you didn't.
Oh.
But no.
I think most or someone did ask about that, and they just realized it
It
Didn't really, wasn't needed, so they asked for
It becomes
quarterly.
too difficult. Maybe we can do that, but the explanations are, it hasn't been posted, it's not, because this is a cash basis,
That's the timing on a month-to-month basis becomes very hard to.
It's the same on the quarter basis.
Well, it
right?
is. It's not
But-
as, it's a little bit more tempered on a quarterly basis, but it's still, if what we're interested in this year is understanding, is there is there beginning of a downward trend on the expense line, on the revenue line, you're going to be better seeing it on a month-to-month basis than you are on a quarter-to-quarter, because then you're not going to be as surprised.
And maybe we are too cautious, and maybe we drop that, after a few months.
Yeah, maybe.
But if we are concerned, as John said, it might give us a little bit more view on things. We all know that
Kind of
there are
advance
timing
warning.
issues, but the timing issues are also exist on a quarterly basis.
Sure.
So maybe, if it's not too much work, I have no idea,
no,
but
no, no.
I would assume you do a monthly closing anyway.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It
So,
would
no.
be at least helping us to get a sense,
Yeah.
right? For us, do
We're
we
just
need to
mind
take
behind,
actions
like,
or not?
It'll
we
just
ju-
be 1 month behind.
Yeah,
that's
because
it. It won't
of
be,
the materials
that,
being
so,
ready
yeah.
2 weeks before, it's, I can't close the first, you kind of need,
Even if it
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
the
it's the-
even if it wasn't in the financial statements, if you're able to come up with leading and lagging indicators, and there
Yeah.
have to be, when you can,
Well, let's
I'll just use the
let's keep
same
it really
spreadsheet.
simple and just say, every time you close a month, we ought to be able to look at that. And then
yeah.
And then
So
let's
I'll
figure
just
out if we
use-
need
yeah,
more data.
I can use that template that I have and just,
Yep.
sales permits pool.
Yep.
And just things that are
Just the
coming
big
out.
headlines.
Yeah.
Yep,
okay,
okay?
sure, yes.
That would be very helpful to Rod, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have more?
No, no, this is just the revenues.
You can close.
This is her time of the year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we have an opportunity for more citizens' comments. Does anybody have any additional comments that they would like to make?
Okay.
Michael, do you have a committee member comment?
Oh, thank you.
Mayor? Me either. Motion to adjourn? Done. We're done.